Hey, welcome back to Revenue Optimization Radio. It's the one show that takes a look at, well, how to optimize your revenue. Hosted by Patrick Morrissey, CMO of Altify. Revenue Optimization Radio is brought to you by those good folks. So why hold back? Let's have them tell you more right now.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another edition of Revenue Optimization Radio. As you know, if you happen to be a listener, and we thank you for that, we oftentimes get into discussions about what does good look like in sales and marketing, and where do you find competitive advantage? And in this case, we're going to zoom out a little bit and really think about competitive advantage, not necessarily in hand-to-hand combat of sales, but what does that look like in terms of how do you capture, how do you own, how do you dominate a market? And for that, oftentimes the solution to that question is you need to build and own your own category. And I'm excited to welcome Paul Maher to the program because he's somebody who's helping companies rethink not just their brands and their communications, but actually their category and their go-to-market strategy holistically. So we're going to get into what that looks like, what it means, and why it's so critically important in the world we live in right now. Paul, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Pat. Delighted to be here and speaking to your listeners.
Well, and we're excited to talk to you and have you drop some knowledge on us. But let's get a little bit of background on you first, Paul, because you and I have known each other for years. But you are the founder and CEO of Positive over here in London, where I happen to be spending the week this week. Give everybody a little bit of background on who you are, the Positive team, and the type of work you do.
Well, I would describe myself, I suppose, most of all as a recovering journalist. I started off as a tech journalist and then went on to have a career, some of which, as you know, has crossed over with you. So I think we both touched base at the .com.bomb that was the fastest growing e-consultancy ever, Scient. I've also had in-house roles at Mercury Interactive, HP, and VMWare, where I headed up comms for the EMEA region. The last 10 years, I've been building a business which is called Positive. And we are one of the leading European-based but global in span content marketing consultancies that work with B2B tech companies. And I'm very pleased to say that we've just been nominated for this year's Sabre as the best in EMEA for earned media. And it's not all we do, but boy, am I proud of the team and delighted to talk to you guys because we've done some interesting work with Altify and others.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk to you as well. Congrats on the Sabre Award. But going back to your specific background, you have worked in really senior roles for some heavyweight brands, be it HP, VMware, Mercury. So you've seen at scale what great looks like in terms of communications, but more broadly, go to market. And when you fast forward to the present day and you look out at the market and some of what you're working on with your clients and what you're seeing going on, what do you think is critically important if you're trying to architect a go-to-market strategy? And give me your perspective on the intersection between go-to-market and how do you build a category?
Great question. So for anybody that is trying to build a category, categories are interesting if they can help you sell. And that is initially why you need a great category. And a category will help you sell more. And proven research is that it will help you dominate in terms of margins. So whilst companies like Apple may not have the most whizzy technology, they probably, in fact, clearly at this point don't sell the most handsets. They take the most amount of margin out of the category of smartphones because of the way they've thought about and dominated a category. Sales teams always need something to sell. And the key word these days in B2B tech, it wasn't always thus because this was often an engineer-led space, is different. You need to be different. You need to have something different in your bag to what everybody else is saying. I think one of your sayings, Pat, that I like a lot is that you don't want to be fighting somebody else's battle. It's important that you win in your own terms, and that's why a category is critically important.
I would tend to agree with you for a whole variety of reasons, but give me a little bit of the foundation here, Paul. Why does a company need to have a category? Or said differently, I think a lot of us, particularly on the technology side, and you mentioned some pretty high-powered names that owned multiple positions on the top right of the Gartner quadrant, so they're really spanning categories. But give me the base case on from whether I'm a big company or I'm a small startup company, why do I need a category?
Yes. So, I think that one of the things that's very obvious is we as humans have cognitive biases. And you might dismiss that, but sales is a very psychological game. And there are certain biases in the book, Play Bigger, where a lot of the thesis or early thinking around category design came from. You'll find people citing a lot of psychology there around things like anchoring effect, which means the first time you ever hear about something like a service like Uber, they become the service that you anchor to and compare to. And so it's very hard to displace in a human buyer's mind something like that. So anchoring effect is one of them. There's also other effects which play into the fact that categories are so powerful for us humans. You know, there's group thinking, and there's the fact that once you've decided that you're going to go with something and you regard somebody as a category leader, it's very hard to think of the number two, or actually the 3 and 4, which is where it gets really tough, to be the leader in that category. And if you think about it from a buyer's perspective, a lot of people, you know, not just procurement, but just frontline enterprise buyers allocate in their mind. They may not say it explicitly, but they allocate a number or a percentage of their budget that they're going to spend for something. And shifting that's really hard unless you give them compelling reason. In other words, create a category in their mind that they haven't addressed or that solves a different problem. Yeah, when is that, you know, as it scales up, you're right. I've worked with some multi-billion-dollar organizations, and we literally wrote the book on category design during the Mercury days. And when that got taken over by Hewlett-Packard, you know, that was a north of $4 billion deal. But that was some of the thinking that originated from that was when the company was much smaller. And so there is a role for category at all stages in a company's growth, whether you're a startup. And, you know, I would say it's fundamental as a startup when you're competing for VC money, VC attention, early market product market fit. You definitely want to be talking category there, even though it'll be much scrappier. The vision may not be so fleshed out. You may not have put as many cycles into it. And it may be that you have to be quite light on your feet to pivot. So I think that's pretty important at startup. I would say at scale up stage, category thinking is absolutely critical, because if you're not clear at the point when you're trying to scale, when everybody's competing for leadership in a category, if you're not clear what's different about your approach, then you'll never dominate the category. And so I think it's critical for scale-ups to start thinking that way, and certainly have lots of experience of working, including with yourselves on that sort of stuff. And then if you're post the category win, let's say you didn't get to be the category king, as they call it in the book, and you don't dominate and you need to turn around. I think trying to convince the world that you are a viable and hot company that's worth considering from a sales perspective in a turnaround situation, I would say it's life and death. I would say, you know, not having a category as you think about turning around is pretty terminal. And I think some of the reasons that you want to do that include keeping the best sales folks you've got,
right? Making
sure that your marketing team is hitting customers with propositions that they like. There's just a lot of research that says being a category king or having a mission, which means following a category, is going to keep the best people, which is obviously at all points in the journey critical.
So I want to come back and touch again on something that you said that I think might be overlooked in this, because category is great in theory. It's hard in actual practice. But the first question there, and going back to what you said a second ago, Paul, which was, this is honing in on what's different. Give me some examples, you know, big and small, from your background or your experience that kind of illustrate organizations that have really made category stick, and it's turned into a large defensible position that's helped them grow massive value.
Right. So, I mean, the obvious one that I can go to straight away is obviously I'm sorry to hark back to the world of testing. So why would a small Israeli founded company out of your hood actually become such a large acquisition for a global giant like HP? And the answer to that is the thinking there amongst the leadership team was, yes, we are the leaders.
We're talking about Mercury in this case, right?
Mercury Interactive, yeah, back in the 2000s, had a great sort of jump with its testing products around the Y2K issue, and then was looking really for the next trick. And so what they alighted on with the help of the chief marketing officer there, Christopher Lockhead, was to come up with a category that allowed them to expand out of testing and into the wider IT ops market. And so category they came up with was business technology optimization. And you can tell just straight off the bat, that talks to a large total addressable market that brings the company into direct conflict with people that it was probably selling with to a certain extent in the ops market. But it also gives a vision of difference that somebody like a CIO can take back to their board and say, look, what are we doing on business technology optimization? It's a new category that we're not really thinking about. And so I'm going to need some additional budget. And so that really changed the game for that company. I'll give you an example from the world that we all live in, like the world of consumers. If you think about the automobile, or as we call it over here, the car market, and you think about the journey that the humble SUV that many of us drive these days has been on, from a GP, general purpose vehicle, known during wartime as a Jeep, and how that market has evolved so that you have a myriad different subcategories of the SUV Uber category, if you will. And the one that I like the best, just because I happened to visit the factory recently, is the way that Lamborghini has taken the SUV. And already you have mid-size SUVs, you have cross-purpose SUVs, et cetera, et cetera. And they've taken it to the next stage. And now they have their version of that, which clearly they wanted to create a category and not just a model. So they have the SSUV, and you see other people doing this, which is supercar SUV. And that's really an example of category thinking that has implications for everything around the market outside of the usual stuff. They could have just said, hey, it's like an SUV but faster, but their decision was, we're creating a category. The category has one product in it right now, and there have been others and there will be others, and it's called an SSUV. So hopefully that explains the power of the category methodology.
It does. It also explains the answer to the question, how do I get from my home to Tesco's at 300 kilometers an hour? And get groceries for the family and get home as quickly as possible before the match starts.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I was in San Agostino, which is where they make these things. They were building the line when I was there in summer, and I was wondering to myself, how long would it be before some snooty little kid was ferried to school in this thing? And I think I saw one about 2 months later on the streets of West London. So they did something right.
They absolutely did. And who doesn't want a Lamborghini SUV just on principle?
Exactly. And that's really, it's about that creating the desire and causing the question internally. It may be a question that you've not asked yourself before. I mean, I certainly managed the rainy evening. I've been coming back from a night out, forlornly waving my London Evening Standard at what is quite a smelly taxi that maybe someone's just walked out of with the McDonald's, or maybe it smells like an ashtray, and the chap's all surly and he wants to take cash only, and it's just a horrible experience.
Yep.
Versus, you think about what Uber's done and changed the question, completely changed the paradigm. And that has affected the entire market, because now, guess what? Taxi drivers are a little bit more grateful. Their machines that used to mysteriously break down when you want to pay by card don't break down anymore. It really has changed the game. And that's it. Changing the question, proving you're different, is what category design is all about. It's the advantage it gives sales teams who deploy it.
Yeah, and I want to come back to the sales piece in a second, but I want to challenge you, because there's a school of thought, particularly in technology where you and I grew up, that category is something that decomposes or maybe composes and shows up in real life as a Gartner Magic Quadrant. And what you're suggesting is a little bit the opposite, that you've got to change the game and hone in on the different and carve out some space, which would seem to suggest that it's not up to Gartner or Forrester or the old line group anymore. What's your take there?
So when we're consulting on category projects with leadership teams, we always insist that CEO's in the room. No disrespect, the CMO may not be there, Pat, but the CEO and preferably the founder is in the room, so we can get right to the heart of the problem. And when you have those open and often quite vulnerable conversations with people whose genius has created the technology that you're talking about, that's when you find where the different is. Now, if I flip that forward and imagine that somebody's created a product, and typically becomes a marketing issue, and the sales teams are crying out for, give me some proof points. What often happens, all too often in my opinion, is that Gartner gets called in, or choose your vendor, your analyst of choice. Mm-hmm. And what really happens there is you take your different and you nail a 2x2 matrix around it that somebody else has decided is where you will play. And we call that putting the nails in your coffin. Because once you've agreed complicitly or explicitly to be part of a magic quadrant or a wave or whatever you want to call it, your fate is out of your hands. They will put you somewhere on a map and they will decide where that is. And that is the exact opposite of proving what your difference is. Your difference will come from those key insights at the start of the journey of the category build, where you see exactly what's out in the market and how you tackle a problem differently. I honestly think that one of the worst things you can do, both from a marketing spend point of view and more importantly from a category point of view, is call those guys in early. Now, there's a role for all of those folks when you think about middle funnel decision making, and where they do some really useful work about consulting on the realities of implementing projects and putting technology in. Yep. But as a sales strategy and a go-to-market strategy, it's just asinine.
I tend to know a lot of people who would agree with you. Let's hold on there, take a quick pause and pay the bills, and we'll come back to get some instruction from you on how do you actually, what are the foundational blocks to bring a category to life? Stay with us.
We live in a subscription economy. You're only as successful as your customers, and that requires a mindset shift from what's our strategy for the customer to what's our customer's strategy and how can we help. Focusing on your customers' needs and providing value in every interaction is critical to building long-term relationships and sustained sales success. The challenge for most sales leaders and their teams is their sales process doesn't match how customers buy in today's digital world. Sustained growth and sales execution are impossible because the revenue team isn't aligned with consistent process and methodology to understand their customers' people and their problems. Altify's customer revenue optimization solutions activates the entire revenue team with a combination of strategy, methodology, and applications to help companies deliver more value to their customers. The result is increased sales velocity, improved win rates, and increased customer satisfaction. With a CRO strategy, now you can effectively collaborate across the entire revenue team to win new business and unlock more cross-sell and upsell opportunities. Built natively on the Salesforce platform, Altify helps revenue leaders and their teams achieve sustained revenue growth and sales success. Visit altify.com today to see how they help accelerate sales performance for some of the world's best sales teams, including Autodesk, Comcast, GE, Honeywell, Salesforce, Tableau, and United Health Group.
And with that, we hand it back to Patrick and his discussion of...
Hey, welcome back. We're getting a deep dive and an instruction from Paul Maher, CEO of Positive, on the critical importance of category. And Paul, when we left off a second ago, you were talking about the fact that, hey, there's a role for analysts, but creating the category is not it. That's more down funnel, and that's farther down the maturity curve. So I'm a CEO, I'm a senior executive or a sales leader, and I'm thinking we've got to carve out our different, we've got to create our own space and build a category. Give me the foundational elements about what's required to bring a category to life.
Sure, thanks. I'm sorry if I call the analyst asinine then. They're probably a little better than that, but sort of from the heart. So how do we start on a category engagement? Well, the first thing we do, as I mentioned previously, is we really like to get into the minds of the founder, technical leads, and the guys that have really created the technology, because from them, we will find what we're looking for. And the goal in a category is normally the problem that you're solving. And it could be a bunch of closely related problems, but describing the problem that you solve is surprisingly hard. You will know this too, but in terms of just getting what the first building block out of a bunch of founder discovery and insight is a thing called a POV, or point of view, which reads somewhat like a film script. But that document, which may be no more than like a page and a couple of pages of text, can take 30 plus revisions. And as my latest obsession is sleep and some great books on the power of sleep for helping with creative thinking, those 29, 30 revisions may have to be subsequent dates. So they may be like, you may go do a session and sweat on the problem. Then, a smart thing to do is often leave it for a weekend or a few days, come back at it, chew it again, and then just always with this very, very high bar of, is this point of view sufficiently different than everybody else in the market? So point one is the founder discovery and then the point of view. When you have that, you can get close to naming your category. Again, a process that could take dozens and dozens of iterations, often does. Maybe you want to share some of your stuff with CRO, that'd be interesting. And then the other bits that you need are a blueprint, which is, you can think of a blueprint a little bit like what they used to call a marketecture. Yep. A good way to build a great one of these is to think about the various personas that you've got, and can you fit all of those guys onto something that you can chalk and talk and whiteboard? Sort of like some architectures, not all, but in a blueprint, highly graphical format. And then as you evolve and you start to see a little bit of future, you go to a stage which is the Pro 2 standard sort of consultants, the current and the future states. And then build out your ecosystem with who you see as players, not just today, but in the future. When you have all of that done, which is typically 3 to 6 months work, depending on how fast you can move, and really about decision making, because this is about change management, you then move to a strike cadence and you start figuring out how you're going to take the outside world and let them know all about your category.
Give me the 2 seconds on a strike, because I heard a Christopher Lochhead interview, and one of his insights around strike, particularly as a smaller or an insurgent trying to build brand and sales and category is it's really tough to compete with the big guys. So part of the insight around a strike is trying to crank up the volume level for a much shorter compressed period of time to really put a dent in the universe. Give me a little bit more color from your perspective on what a good strike looks like and how do you catalyze the momentum of trying to create a category in a way that becomes visible to the outside world.
Yeah. Okay. So we're all in the tech marketing space, and it's a well-known statistic that one thing that will eat up a lot of your marketing budget will be events. And we mentioned our good friends in the analyst houses who have amazing events that are really expensive.
Yes.
So there's the sticker price, and then there's all my sales guys are on a booth looking at their iPhones price, which is the lost productivity price, and then there's often the price which is the opportunity cost. What if those guys were actually those guys and girls were actually out in front of customers on Zooms selling, as opposed to standing under a big expensive booth that's been shipped halfway around the world.
Right.
And so when you take your category out, it's going to involve some marketing. That's how you amplify the message. And some elements of marketing are very expensive and chew up a lot of your resources, like events. Other elements of marketing don't need to be. So it's pretty low cost to do LinkedIn and Twitter and social campaigns, PPC, SEO, all of that sort of stuff. But that to me is just rolling thunder. That's low level, works all the time, not terribly expensive. Of course, you should be doing it. And then the danger is once you have the big items budgeted so that you're at several events and you got your low level stuff going, everything else becomes sort of peanut butter, afterthought. We'll just do it without paying attention to it.
Right.
The strike idea takes away from all of that. And it says, let's look at my spend in its entirety and let's figure out how to punch a hole into the stratosphere, not all day, every day, because that's unrealistic, but aligning everything you have to make a push at the right time. So that involves everything. So that involves the campaigns, the branding campaigns you've got running. If you're going to do a rebrand, it's a great thing to put into a strike. It will involve sales training to make sure everyone's aware of what the new strike messaging will come back. When we were at Mercury, we had a freeze on product development. So if the guys didn't get stuff into the release we were doing, it's slightly different now with continuous releases. But yeah, everything from sales through to product and engineering through to marketing was all focused on moments in time when you could punch above the stratosphere, hit the big guys, and then if you needed to, because of budget's restraints, just duck back down, lick your wounds, and stay ahead. If you're not already the king, it's more like fighting a guerrilla war, fighting on all fronts. It's just a smarter way to get your message and get your category won.
Totally. And actually what you're drawing to is, so give me the outcome in terms of sales, or give me an example of that, because what I hear you saying is go big, maximize the effort. Everybody on the team is involved, from marketing to sales to product to operations, et cetera, et cetera. But really what I want to see is coming out of this thing is I want to see some forward momentum and some pipeline and some sales. So what's the impact on sales?
Yeah, great. So we're working right now on an engagement with a European software company, and the outcome for sales, or the influence on sales of this category work, has been significant. So straight off the bat, there was some changes with products, and there were way too many products, and we changed all that around. But in terms of go-to-market, they looked at their sales. They had these 20 products, and they looked at which products were actually selling and which weren't. And when doing that analysis, they realized actually really only about 2 of their products, possibly 1 of their products, really, really mattered. And then when they looked at that and who was selling that, it turned out that there were just a very few people, the CEO included, who could make those sales. So our work on the category changed their entire thinking about how the sales team functioned. We came up with a new POV for them. We recommended a strike strategy. And one of the first things that they've done, and this is highly recommended for sales teams for strike, is they started certifying people on their new POV. So from a sales perspective, you are now not going to be able to effectively make your number, but you will not be able to do high-level sales engagements unless you're certified on the point of view. And so what does that mean from a day-to-day basis? So now they will be taking some of that money that they used to peanut butter on things like events, which was very hard to measure, and lots of sales teams involved, and they will be doing one-on-one executive dinner type events. You know about this yourself, Pat, where you can get close and personal and eyeball customers, talk them through your difference on a very personal basis. Now, these are not inexpensive, not insignificant uses of time, but what it means from a salesperson's point of view is, A, I have to get somebody to that table so it's really clear where my value is to the board.
Right.
B, I get to check out live and I show the skills that I've just been certified on how well I can talk to the category. And also it means that they have, if they plan it right and they get their strike timing right, they strike just ahead of when they need the sales. So they're not asking for sales at a time when the customer's not ready. They know about the cadence. They know they're going to be popping up a couple of times a year, and they know when they need to put the squeeze on, and they're not speaking when everybody's there at the Dreamforce or Gartner or Forrester event, all asking for check signings. They've done their work ahead of time. So it fundamentally changes the way that salespeople operate.
And that's, I think, maybe the most compelling piece of the whole thing is the category not only changes the market perception, but it changes the way sales operates, which is really where the rubber meets the road. So I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot of things going on. 2 last questions for you, Paul. So first, give me an example of somebody from a sales, marketing, leadership perspective that you worked with that stands out as best in class or taught you something that you take with you as you advise clients and work to move the market now.
Sure. I think I'll pick on Bill Connor. He's the chief executive officer of a company called Sonic Wall out of Dallas, Texas. Mm-hmm. And Bill is just one of the most compelling spokespeople you've ever met, one of the most fantastic speakers. I believe his background is related to the church or certainly preaching in some way. And that is obviously a clear advantage for a salesperson. But really, whilst he's great in front of a room, one of the things that I've noticed he does just on a personal basis that really gets his team fired up and commands great loyalty. This is a guy whose company has 18,000 resellers of its products. Is that when he commits to something, he really commits to it. And when he's with you one-on-one, he will hammer home exactly what it is that he said he would do and has done. And an example of that would be, I forget the exact number, but whenever he's one-on-one with executives, I watch him pretty closely. He reminds people exactly how many millions of lines of code he has created since they last met. And that demonstrates absolute commitment to the folks that are trying to sell his product. It differentiates him highly from a lot of people who are just amortizing older products in the space. Yep. And it proves on a personal basis that he cares that you guys are out there selling. No, he has your back and he's going to put brand new products in front of you. So very impressive individual. If you get a chance to meet with him, strongly advise it.
Yeah, sounds like the type of guy we need on this program. But
yeah, let me see if I can do that for you.
Love it. So if I'm out listening to this and I need some help getting my message in order, or maybe more importantly, I need to rethink my category and my entirety of my go-to-market strategy, how do I get in touch with you, Paul?
Thank you. So you can just go right on our website, which is www.positivemarketing.com. You can get hold of me at PMAR, that's Papa Mike Alpha, Hotel Echo Romeo at positivemarketing.com. And if I'm not out to sell, I'd love to help anybody's listening sell. We love to help create categories, and we want to make the best categories we can for some of the best people we know.
Fantastic. Well, Paul, I appreciate your time, and the focus on different is what sells, and the need to have a point of view that is so sharp and so explicit that even salespeople can own it and deliver it every single day as being keys to the castle. I thank you very much for your time and for your insights today, and wish you and the Positive team all the best.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
You've been listening to another episode of Revenue Optimization Radio with your host, Patrick Morrissey from Altify, right here on the Funnel Radio Network for at-work listeners like you.